Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Prees.
Good morning, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples of how small, emerging, and challenger consumer packaged goods brands can go about building and growing their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's the point you are in your journey. The bottom line is Tracy and I have been doing this a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes, done a few good things. We'd love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to establishing and growing your brand. Tracy?
Yeah, so Bruce and I have been in consumer packaged good commercial operations for, we have to admit it, Bruce, 30 plus years. And by commercial operations, we mean marketing, trade marketing, sales, broker management, distributor management. We've done a lot of things in our careers. And again, like Bruce said, that's why we want to share our experiences with our small and emerging brand audiences. Also, what we do is we've been interviewing our colleagues, friends in the industry to share with us their insights. So today we have a very illustrious guest here today, and I'm going to let Bruce introduce his good friend, Mike Wilkins.
Right. Thank you, Tracy. So Mike Wilkins, I've had the pleasure of working with Mike across the table and as a consigliere with issues around being a head merchant at several of the largest retailers in the country. Mike has worked across many classes of trade, and we believe that today's discussion will be very enlightening to the smaller brands that need to understand exactly what it takes to get a guy like Mike and his team interested in a small emerging challenger brand. Everything from what they're looking for to what their expectations are to what success looks like. So Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time. And please give the group a little more background on who you are, what you've done, and what you're doing now, if you'd like to.
Okay, I'm Mike Wilkins. Right now, presently, I'm the president of MJ Wilkins Consultant. I spent almost 44 years in retail. Started in the stores working as a cart boy, and with my last job being the senior vice president of merchandising at the two lead at Dollar General and then Family Dollar. I've worked through various classes of trade. I've worked in the supermarket industry. I've worked for wholesalers. I worked for food brokers. I worked for a drug chain at CVS, and then at Dollar General and Family Dollar. So I have an extensive history with multiple supermarkets and across three classes of trade, and I've worked my way up through from the checker to senior vice president. So I really have a unique perspective in a couple of regards. The diversity of channels, and also I sold for 3 years as a food broker, so I understand the selling aspect of the business too.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Tracy, you want to kick this off?
Absolutely. But first, I want to say thanks, Mike, for joining us. And your background is extremely impressive. And I hate to say it, but between all three of us, we have about 70 plus years of experience in the consumer package industry. So this is going to be an insightful podcast for our listeners today. So the first question is, Mike, tell us a little bit about what's the mental checklist that you would suggest a small emerging brand go through before determining whether they're really ready to go into the retail space here in the U.S.?
I think the first thing is to look at what who their target customer is and what their product line offers, their unique differentiation points. So look internally first, and then identify the retailers they feel that their products fit with best, and then look at the size of those retailers, your capabilities. Do you have the funding to get the inventory necessary? Will you want to be a regional brand or not? So it's first part I always say is your internal capabilities and product fit, and that's the two things I think that need to happen first, and then you get your target list of customers. So you basically narrow down who you want to go after first, because you do not want to go after the whole market in most cases, because you don't have the physical capabilities and the resources to do that. And I've seen some people really fail because you want to build upon successes. You do not want to do a shotgun approach and fail, because failures can disrupt even the wins.
Hey,
Yeah.
Mike, I'm sorry, Tracy. Mike, can you take 1 second and just explain what you're talking about with fit between the brand and the retailer?
So you're looking at you're looking at your product positioning. Is it value oriented, or is it for mainstream, or is it more high end? Is it consumable based? Some retailers are very much into consumables and some are into discretionary. Is it where's the price point play? So you have to look at your competitive landscape. It's all about consumer and that intersection in what I'll call the retailer's go forward strategy and your product fit for that retailer. That's step one. There's more steps down the road, because then you have to identify your consumers. So where can you play, and what's the what is your target consumer? So if you're a high-end product and you're going for the higher income consumers, you probably don't want to start out in the dollar stores. Vice versa, if you're a value-oriented consumer, you're probably not going to go to Whole Foods. So you have to identify the fit for your product and the consumers and where the overlap exists.
That's great insight, Mike. And Bruce and I talk about this on some of our other episodes, where if you've got a high-end skincare brand that retails for $29.99, you probably don't want to go to Dollar General, or to Family Dollar. So that's the example that Bruce and I use. And the other thing I hear you say, which is really important, and again, Bruce and I talk about this on past episodes, you really need a go-to-market strategy. You really need to know, where do I want to go? And how do I get there? Kind of a roadmap. So great insight on those key points. Have a roadmap and know who your consumer is. A lot of brands we talk to these days don't know who their consumer target is. They think they do, but not sure that they really do. Would you agree with that in your experience?
Yes, I think that you have to have a strategy. You just can't go ad hoc to everyone and try to present to everyone and just try to get distribution. I think who are the retailers you definitely need to be in, that you're going to go after aggressively, who are nice to have, and then who you need to stay away from. I think so it is definitely a strategy, and it's your roadmap to success. And I think you've got to start out with that. And there's so much planning, and I think this is where people get a product and they want to run to market. There's so much planning that needs to be done before you do that. And I think that if you don't have a sound strategy, and that's not just product strategy, it means total organization strategy. Can you support what you commit to? So I think that strategy, and then not only a strategy, what's the timeline you want to roll out that strategy? I think that's key too, because you don't want to get in front of your skis and then fall down continuously.
Right. Absolutely.
Hey, Mike. So thanks, Tracy. So Mike, after people have kind of compiled this and run through their checklist and they still think they're ready to go out and approach a national retailer, can you give a few tips from your view on the other side of the desk? What are these brands really getting into? Talk about the benefit of maybe a test versus a full chain rollout. What are the expectations, to the point you were just making? The work starts after the acceptance. Are you ready? Can you supply? So please roll with that.
Yeah, I would say, before you go to the retail, do your homework. And I mean, knowledge is power, and you have to have as much knowledge as anyone in there. So I would say, read an earnings report on the retailers, understand what their initiatives are, go to stores, see exactly where you would be on the shelf or in the section you would be in. Who are your competitors? What price points do they play at? You start to dive deeper down and get into the details. Do some back of the napkin calculations that if you get distribution, how much it, how much volume that would be. Based off of that, do you have the capabilities? Do you have the production capabilities? Do you have the logistics to service their warehouses? Where are their warehouses? Would they, could you do direct to them, or do they have to back all the product? There's, are they high-low? How do you, what cost do you give them if they're an EDLP versus a high-low retailer? How much money are you going to save for their promotional vehicles? Is there slotting that some of the retailers, during your knowledge, they're going for the knowledge, do they charge slotting fees or introductory fees? All these things play into the decision and the knowledge that you need to have before you even think about making that appointment. So I would say, you got to get as much information, and I will say there's people you can go to for information. There's 3 of them on the podcast now, but there's other people you can also go to, brokers and friends in the business to get you that information. But I would say leave no rock unturned, and realize this, and this is from my retail experience. You've got to be prepared for almost any question, because when you get in front of that retailer, if you get in front of that retailer, you got one shot. And if they dismiss you as your product, or you don't present it in the right way, or that you don't understand them as a channel, they kind of dismiss and walk and go to the next. Because keep in mind, you're one of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of products that are trying to get into that retail. And depending on the retailer size, is it a mass that has plenty of space, or is it a limited assortment dollar store, which real tight? Are they destination in your category or not? All these things play into, what you present, how many items you present, which items you present. And then I would say you have to, start formulating your account specific plan for the presentation, meaning where's that white space you want to play in? Where do you think you can win for the retailer? Is it because you're going to give more value to the customer, or are you going to give them an efficacy that they don't have in another product? Or are you going to give them the same value as someone else, but you're at a higher margin? And then you have to play through all those models to see exactly how you want to give. And then you have to understand that there's going to be some negotiation on the way. So there's so much to do, and you're getting into so much. But I will say this: remember, you can test things. Some retailers like testing, others don't. Others like rolling with stuff. And the bigger the reward, usually the bigger the risk. I remember I had a boss one time saying, be real careful with some of these small vendors that we don't, some of our fees don't bankrupt them. Right. Because a markdown, if it's an unsuccessful item, when you're putting it in 6,000 stores or more, all of a sudden you're marking down 4 or 5 pieces per store, and 6,000 is 30,000, and you're taking $1 markdown. There's $30,000 you could get hit with on $1 markdown. If it's a $4 or $5 markdown, all of a sudden you're talking real money, because the multiplier when you get with the number of stores really takes a toll. And then understand what case packs that you see in the store go there during a delivery day. Do they want, like, drug and dollar want smaller case packs? Some of the others want bigger case packs because they don't want they want, and someone like Aldi want PDQs. So how do you go to market is very, and then do you have the capabilities to do what they need done? If you don't, it might be something that you have to look to be able to do, or you might have to try to do a workaround short term.
Thanks, Mike. So to summarize, I think the key point is preparation, understand exactly what you're getting into, because, you know, kind of like the deer hunter, you might only get one shot. So this isn't where a guy like Mike Wilkins is going to let you come back every 8 weeks as you continue to make some headway. Tracy?
Yeah, so good. So I think to summarize all of the detail that Mike offered, which was awesome, Mike, do your homework, small emerging brands, before you get in front of a retailer. And again, I think one of the key things that Mike said is the buyer's going to discount you immediately if they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. But it's okay to say, hey, let me get back to you on that. But they want to feel like you've done your homework and you understand that retailer, you know, as best you can.
Now, I'd like to add, I've had examples where, you know, we were at a food show and we're doing, I call it speed dating meeting, where every 5 minutes you get another company and companies, you know, when I was working for a national company at that time, and they said, where are your stores? And it's like, okay, anything they say after that, it means they didn't spend any time. They have no knowledge. It's just move on. It's like kind of like you almost want to get you know, the gong out and or the hook and take them out of the meeting.
Absolutely. Great example. Great example. So Mike, tell our audience today a little bit about what are the 2 or 3 things that a brand really has to get right with a retailer to be successful, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things that you've seen over your career like that just kills you. They've stepped in the mud, and you see it right away, and you're obviously moving on from that brand. But what do you got to get right, and what do you really need to avoid as a small emerging brand?
Well, I think you have to. I would say you have to get almost everything right, and it sounds ominous, but it's not. It's true. You know, you have to go in, be knowledgeable and prepared for your opening meeting. And once you get the distribution, that's where the real work starts, because, you know, you get the authorization and then you have to say, okay, how do we get connectivity throughout the other portions of the organization? So you talk to the merchants, you got authorization. Now you're going to have to deal with replenishment, distribution, warehousing, you know, accounting. You know, all these things are so important, and that so when you get that authorization, you know, you see the big smiles on the sales rep. That's when the work starts. And I've seen too many, you know, products fail when they don't do that homework after getting authorization, and then it comes time, you're 2 weeks before the reset, and you get the call and say, we're going to be a little late for the reset. And you know, just keep in mind, in the back of your mind, that almost 80% of new items fail within 2 years. So, well, I'll tell you that it's probably 95% of the new items fail if they don't make their initial reset. So I would say do all the other stuff. That connectivity throughout the organization is key. And to me, you know, that means filling out the forms, understanding the admin. Don't go to the buyer. Start developing your a relationship with the admin. Don't be needy to the admin and say, can you fill out the form for me? Because but understand, if they tell you filled out the form wrong, this one, don't say, can you fill out the other eight items for me, because I don't know how to do it. Well, guess what? It's what you're paid to do. So I would say the connectivity throughout the whole organization is step 2. Step 3 is track your sales and not shipments. So many people say we got these big orders and they're all happy, and then all the stuff's collecting dust on the shelf. So know when the first product sells in the store, understand where you are versus your peers, go to stores. So you get, it's a 3-step process. You want to get authorization, you want to get connectivity, and then you want to track and make adjustments. So, and then the 4th thing is make sure you have a merchandising plan to get customers to know you're on the shelf. It's not the field of dreams. People aren't going to just know you're there because you build it and they will come. No, you need to get digital. You have to get some vehicles to get the notification out so the customer can sort through and pick your product out, whether it's packaging, it's a introductory digital coupon. You have to get that out. What vehicles can you use of that retailer to jumpstart it, to get a baseline that's high enough that it's going to be an item they keep long term and not just, okay, next year's reset. 6 months down the road they stop ordering because they're starting to burn through inventory to get ready for the next reset. So those are the steps I think need to be taken, and there's a lot of little detail in those steps. But it's one of those things that if you have the knowledge, you know where the warehouses are. The knowledge and the connectivity is it's not easy, because remember, these people, and I've always preached this to Bruce, the two resources that the retailer has, it's the space to sell your product, and that's what they're managing, and then they're managing their own time, and there's never enough time to do your job. So the more you can make it seamless for them and make it easy, and not try to monopolize their time, the better off and the better you're viewed by the retailer.
Great
We
insight.
love that. Yeah, we love that Mike Wilkins bumper sticker of "Help me manage my time and space." We like that a lot.
I'm still waiting for the residual payments, the royalties.
Yeah, the
Well,
royalties.
your agent from CAA has been very difficult to negotiate with Tracy and I. So, hey, Mike, so moving on to another set of questions, which is kind of similar, but without necessarily naming names, can you provide just a couple of examples of a brand that really nailed stuff right out of the gate, especially if it's a smaller firm? It might be this might be an overstatement, but it might be easy for Unilever or Procter or Clorox to nail something because they've done it a million times. They have a lot of clout with the retailers. But, maybe the best move you ever saw a small emerging brand make, maybe the worst. And then a follow-up of that worst is, can you tell the group, what are the danger signs that if they start to see that smoke on the horizon, you better pay attention? And you just said a couple of them, like you better be able to hit your first order. And you also said track your sales and not just your shipments, make sure it's moving through. So, why don't you roll with that a little bit? Something that really impressed you or your team that maybe you thought, damn, those guys are little and they smoke that thing.
Well, it was a brand actually that had some presence when I got to the dollar stores and in the bags and wraps category. It was a small brand that I call them like a fighter brand. They're playing in category that is dominated by Clorox and Reynolds. And what they did is they got what I'll call a mothballed brand name, and they launched an opening price point in that category, and they were able to win in that opening price point. So they kept that opening price point, that $1, that $2, and that's where they played. And they really they not only did well because of that, but then they started to market, and actually they grew the sales tremendously within our stores. And so they went a small little brand to and they were actually named our vendor of the year in my second or third year. And then they became maybe one of the worst moves too, because then they started getting into space. They started trying to, instead of playing in the white space, they started going head to head against the national brands. And when that happened, that and the proliferation of private label they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little, and they no longer exist in the stores. So, I guess my lesson there is success doesn't mean long-term success. You have to understand growth doesn't mean good all the time, because sometimes you outgrow things and then you become on the radar of other brands, and they come after you. So what I think the things that they did well, they had an excellent sales rep. The guy who called on us was lights out, one of the best. He knew the channel. He built the relationships, the connectivity throughout. He understood the marketing part, the replenishment. So that I call that connectivity was second to none. The tracking of sales, great. I think what happened is the disconnect became when top management wanted to go in a different direction and elevate the brand to something it wasn't. It kind of it imploded a little. So I think we have to, I think if my lesson would be, I've seen other ones, new age beverages that started out in New York City. When I was at CVS, that we tested in New York City, then we went and continue to grow with them until they became a national presence. And they actually went in New York City at the time were actually competing right there with Coke and Pepsi, even though they were a new age beverage in sales. So, I think that what they did is they marketed and kept growing guerrilla, marketing, local marketing to drive that consumer knowledge. So you can do it in a variety of ways. One, you can do it is win with your value, which the bags and wraps company did, or you could do it in another way, which is to grow through marketing and grassroots effort. And both can be very successful. And the thing is, as you grow, you continue and you have successes. Successes breed more willingness of a retailer to continue to grow distribution throughout more stores. And I think that, and that's true also when you get one or two items in with a retailer and they're successful, they're more willing to take a chance on items 3 through 10 then, because they see success. So they understand that your item's doing well, you're handling the replenishment and service levels, your connectivity, you're participating in with their merchandising vehicles, and you're growing sales greater than their comp store growth, and that all, and also sales is part of only half the problem. Is I always tell my buyers when they say, "What do you want me to go after, sales or profits?" And I say yes.
Yeah.
And that should be true for the products that you put in the store. What do you want me to grow, your sales or your profits? Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
so Mike, those are great examples. Can you just take a second and talk about the 2 or 3 danger signals, like the smoke on the horizon, where the brand needs to start being worried? Because again, guys like Tracy and I are paid to worry. So, almost as soon as something gets in, I'm worried about what might go wrong as much as I'm worrying about how high the upside is. So what are a couple of the danger signs that someone who's dealing with a national retailer, maybe for the first time, should really be alert to? What are those tripwires?
I think the first thing is to track your sales. So, and you do that through a variety of ways. If they have internal data that you are getting, scan data, that's the best way. Depending on which level that you are getting data, where are you in the category, where are you versus projection. So if you're projected to do 2 units per store per week and you're doing a half, and the backup orders come and you say, well, I got all those orders, so I must be doing good. They're backing up the inventory. Well, because they have a whole pipeline to fill. And when you look at that actual movement and it's half of what you project or less, that's a red flag right there. Then number 2 is that you plateau early, meaning that in weeks 1, 2, that you hit your height and then you start flatlining. So on week 2, you're selling 3,000 units, and on week 3, you're selling 3,000. 4, you're selling 3,005. That means that's what you're going to sell unless there's some problem out there. So going out to stores, you sometimes identify problems. Did you know where you were going to be positioned in the planogram? Are you on the bottom or top shelf? People don't like being there, but guess what? Sometimes the new products end up there. Are you value priced? Is there new items that came out that weren't in the set before that are playing in the same white space that you wanted to play in? those are the kind of things. And then, have you gotten in any of the merchandising vehicles? Did you do, has anyone, you're competing against done a digital coupon, something to get the introductory that is out, that has bested you? The whole point is you've got to continually, that would be the first thing. If you're not hitting projection, number one, you got to find out why. And number two is it something you did, the retailer did, or is just going to be a fact of life? Meaning there's another brand that's a quarter cheaper and it's playing in the same space, and the only way you're going to beat it is to, okay, now you've got to say, can I reduce my cost by a quarter and still live and make profits? Or is this just, I'll call, I'd rather fail quick than extend it. The second thing is don't let the retailer tell you you're doing poorly. Be proactive. If you're not proactive, meaning if you see your sales aren't, go to the buyer and say, I want to, get it, work with marketing. We've set up digital coupons. If the buyer tells you you're not doing well, you're already on the radar to be discontinued. Because, retailers now, they track items weekly. They see the top items, the new items, and the bottom. And it's you can, it's funny because, I've had deep discussions with my buyers in past where they say it's still growing, and I say, well, if it keeps doubling every week, it'll still be at the bottom. At some point you have to try to minimize the loss for everyone involved, meaning you stop the orders and so forth. So you don't want to get it to that point, and you don't want the retailer to tell you that you're not doing well. You want to be proactive. So I think those are some of the things I would look to do. Anything to spur the sales and be proactive.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, one quick follow-up before I kick it to Tracy. So we have a lot of our newer, smaller brands that we work with or that ask us questions. Once they get accepted, they kind of take a deep breath and think they're safe for a year. So in your role, either as a buyer or managing a team of buyers, how soon are you identifying an early slow mover?
Within weeks. We don't make any, we look at it every week from week, the week prior to reset, because some stores set early and some set late.
Yeah.
So, we look at it usually for the first 6 weeks at very on a weekly basis, and we look at the rank order. The rank order tells you, the successful items versus the non-successful items. So then if there's 20 new items in a set and you're in the bottom 5, odds are you're probably not going to make it. So we start in our mind, start saying, okay, what do we need to do? So do we take down the forecast as a retailer? We start saying, okay, it's not going to move what we projected. We want to take the forecast down because we don't want the excess inventory in the system. So if all of a sudden you don't, the forecast has been reduced, because that spurs for the first 10 weeks, usually the replenishment. So you'll see orders drop a little. And we do that because, if the item doesn't pick up in sales, we don't want that markdown liability for ourselves and the manufacturer, because remember, even if the manufacturer pays 50% of the cost, we pay the other part to get rid of that product. So we want to minimize markdowns. So it's very early on that they're identified, and then what the actions usually might take months. There's usually a post-mortem done by many of the big retailers 6 months afterwards, and which means about 3 to 4 months after the item sets, you look and say, okay, these 3 items aren't going to make it. Let's fail fast and let's make the adjustments. And good retailers are starting to make those adjustments quicker and quicker. So you don't have a year. You have to be win, place, or show in the first 3 to 6 months. Otherwise, you know what? You don't want to ship it on month 11, day 28 to the retailer, because that's just markdowns that you're going to eat into your profit. So don't think that you have a year. You have until your product doesn't perform to the standards that you and the buyer projected that they would. And that's the key. One of the things that I always get a kick out is some of the projections that some of the retail the CPGs come in with. Okay, we think you're going to do 2 cases per week per store, and you're like, that's going to be better than Coca-Cola, you know. and you realize that you know that's just not going to happen, and so you got to realize where you are versus your competitors in the scheme of things. And if you're in the bottom quartile, your chances are very slim. If it's something you messed up, guess what? As I say, you don't expect a second chance for a product presentation. Don't expect a second chance if the sets, you know, you miss the resets either. It elevates everything. And a lot of times after the resets are done, what I find is if an item ships late, it's in the back room and it never gets out. It dies.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike. So folks, 90 days tops. You got to be cooking. Tracy?
Yeah. So Mike, share with our audience today, what is the best way? And I know that small emerging brands struggle with this because I work with them. What's the best way to get a meeting with a buyer?
That's one of the toughest
get their
things.
attention.
Yeah, it's not the easiest. There's a couple of ways. I would say if you're a smaller emerging brand, you can go through consultants, but I would say the number one way to do it is through brokers. Brokers are low cost ways to who have relationships with the retailers. They can help give you that knowledge, where the knowledge is power, what we talked about before. They have the infrastructure to take the orders, track orders. They understand the reset schedules. They understand the personalities involved. They understand the paperwork that needs to be done. They take a lot of that homework that starts once you get authorization, and they help guide you through that process. Either a consultant or broker can do that. I would say a broker does it a little more consistently because they actually do it, have products in with that retailer. I think the other ways you can do it is through trade shows. Example is you can go to the candy manufacturer show in Chicago. You can go to NACDS. You can go to ECRMs. I find that ECRM is a good avenue to get in front of retailers. And I as a retailer, we always most of my buyers look forward to ECRM shows because they got to see a lot of new things and a lot of smaller brands in the speed meeting times. And some of them were very intriguing, and we did seasonally some business with. We did an in-and-out promotion, and that's another thing. Just back to you say go into stores. Can you do an in-and-out promotion for a store to see what are the viability of beta tests, something like that? Those sometimes work with some of the smaller brands to get them a little used to everything. But I would say number one is broker to me, and then getting it to trade shows like ECRM are always a good facet. Consultants like myself or you guys are very good at connectivity, but someone like myself doesn't have the infrastructure to process orders, do all that paperwork. So we're not doing that, but we can sometimes get FaceTime with some of the retailers. But I would say the most reliable brokers because they meet on a consistent basis with the retailers.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mike.
Great insight.
Tracy, any follow-ups here?
No, that was perfect. That's exactly right on.
Perfect. So Mike, how could people get in touch with you if they want to tap into your knowledge and perhaps have you help represent them?
You can get in touch with me at M as in Mike, J as in Joseph, Wilkins, Wilkins, consultant, consulting, @gmail.com. And just if you heard about me on this podcast, just send I heard you talking on Road to Retail, and I'm interested, so I understand where you're coming from. And it's not a solicitation for anything to sell me anything.
Yeah.
My company, I look at the overall discounted dollar space is what I'm doing most of my work on. I do work with CPGs, analyzing their SWOT analysis on products, which are the best fits, where's the white space, try to help guide them through their process, and make sure that when they get in front of the retailer, that they're prepared for the questions. I think a couple of things I'd just like to point out. We talked a little about presentations, but we didn't get into the little details. I just want to go just one little tangent here is, I talked about buyers manage space and they have limited time. Don't go in with a 30-page deck. If you go in with a 30-page deck, be prepared to go through your 6 to 10 pages at most. 10 is probably the limit, and then have an appendix with all the backup information. Do not go in with a 36-page deck that when you get done the presentation at you're on page 6 and there's 5 minutes left and the buyer says, we're not going to get through this, and you say, can I have another appointment? And they say, in a couple decades. Just be careful of that. So these are things that myself and others can help you in preparing and getting ready for that time, and to understand, because mistakes cost you a lot of money in this business, and that's for the retailers and for the CPGs. So you want to make good decisions for both companies as you go forward.
So as we head to the big finish, one of the things, folks, that Tracy and I've talked about on other episodes, as we've talked with Mike and other buyers, they all say the same thing: keep your presentations short. If you need to have 85 pages in your appendix, great. But your meeting for that 30 minutes, etc., has to be the key stuff. And then guys like Mike and his team, and Tracy can add on here if he'd like, for sure. These people, when they're seeing suppliers, they're usually seeing a bunch in a day, whether it's Zoom or in person. And if they get behind, at some point, they have to make up their time. So if your buyer is 10 minutes late for you, in your mind, mentally, you should be thinking, what pages can you skip? And the first thing you ask Mike Wilkins when he comes in, you say, hey, Mike, are we still good for 30 minutes? And if he says no, 20, adjust. You got to be able to adjust on the fly. Tracy, the big finish.
The big finish. Well, first of all, Mike, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. Great insight, great advice from a CPG veteran. So we really appreciate it. And we will be posting this podcast here in about 2 weeks. And please follow us on our LinkedIn page, Road to Retail. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, also on Spotify and iTunes. So anywhere where you listen to podcasts, you can find us. So please subscribe.
I don't know why people wouldn't subscribe, Tracy. I just don't know why.
I don't either. But
hey, Mike, thank you so much, and good luck out there, folks.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.